Welcome again to the sort of NTIA sort of round world trip somewhat, and we're lucky enough to have Milan, who has been a formidable force in the nighttime economy for Holland, Amsterdam, and in many other countries. He's shown a way forward, driven so hard in representing and being an advocate for our industry. So I'm very, very pleased to be able to snatch some time with him. He's also a winner of our Nighttime Ambassadors Award. So, you know, it was very important to get him on here and really sort of delve into some of the challenges that have been going on around the sector, particularly in 2020, which you know has been very difficult. So thank you, Mirik, for coming on. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, look, let's get into it. I mean, you know, for most people out there, some people know you very well, and you know, obviously ourselves, we know you from you know, many different sort of dynamics. So I just think for people out there, the people that possibly don't know you, if you could give us a bit of an introduction and give us a bit of an understanding of your background and where you've come from, and you know, pet hates. Do you like, you know, what's your favorite color? All those sort of things would be amazing. So I'll leave you to sort of give us the full Mirik experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so thank you for that great introduction. So I've been a club promoter all of my working life. I was 20 when I organized my first parties in Amsterdam, and that helped me to develop my talents. And I think that's a story that is really so connected and so important for nightlife in general. It's really a place where creative talent gets developed, and also where yeah, you meet new friends, you discover who you are, but also yeah, in the end it turns into your daytime job. Many of the people I worked with in the past, they never went to school for promoting house parties, and they never went to school for organizing or promoting festivals. And after doing that for yeah, for 15 years, it was I ended up doing festivals, a Fest festival here in Amsterdam with 10,000 capacity. I run a club night for more than 13 years called Draw, together with Joost van Bellen, and we introduced people like Errol Alkan, Boys Noise, Justice, all to the Dutch scene. And that was a very yeah, for me, like a very important moment in my life, but also it really shaped me to who I am today. And back in 2012, I was elected as the night mayor of Amsterdam. Back then it was a voluntary position. It was something which was it had a fun title, but it didn't really have any substance. And the minute I started in that role, I realized if we really want to do this well, we really have to be very transparent about how we want to approach this. We need to make sure that, you know, that we have support from government, that we have support from the industry, but also from city resident groups, because that is also often forgotten. Or what you see often happening is that cities say, well, here are the residents, here are the promoters, or here are the operators. Let them figure it out with two of them. And of course, I don't think that's the approach. It should always be this triangle, and I think a night mayor or an advocate should be in the middle to make sure that everybody can work together better. Over the last years, we've been traveling a lot all around the world, and explaining more and more what the role of the night mayor or nightlife advocates are. Yeah, this has led to a global movement of more than 50 cities being now on board with night mayors or officers of nightlife, or of course club commissions or any other associations. Yeah, I think that, like, you know, but I think it's really much about the core of nightlife is still, and this is also what you see with this pandemic. It's really about people getting together, and it's like it's one of the first needs you have, to interact with people, you know, and to share ideas, and often that is done, you know, late at night, you know, and you also open up more to other people because you have something in common. You're both out at night. and that's already your first step to getting closer to each other. And that is what I really think is the power of nightlife and music.
Amazing. I think the interesting part, and something that's come from this pandemic, is it's actually drawn people together. Cross-sector communication has got stronger, whether you talk about live events, whether you talk about electronic music. There just seems to be this desire, given crisis, to come together. And the one thing that we've said, right the way across the board, is we don't want to lose that sense of community that's brought people together. Whether you talk about the localized sort of institutions and the fact that promoters and clubs and bars have actually drawn together and become food banks and things like that, which has been amazing to see. So there are some positives from this, but there are, as you can imagine, there are some huge draws. So just get diving straight into it. Just from the perspective of Holland, Amsterdam in particular, how do you think the industry itself has coped with the pandemic? How do you think it's been able to manage this situation and this prolonged sort of, challenge around lockdowns and provision and closures, etc.?
Yeah, so of course, I definitely have saw the same thing. A lot of people joining together. Definitely cities that have already a form of nightlife advocacy in place. There are definitely more resilience because the lines are shorter towards City Hall. More people are coming together and working more closely together. But it has been very challenging, and definitely it's really very challenging when there is not so much government support. So there's definitely, of course, there's government support for businesses to keep their staff employed and that kind of stuff, like more like on the national scale. But the thing we were all very scared of, that the lights would go back on again, the latest in nightlife. And I really think that this will happen. So I think the response has been good as a form of, okay, we're unifying and we're speaking to government all together. But still, if there isn't really a willingness to take care of this industry, it's very difficult. Then you can come with your arguments, but there's not a willingness within government. And to explain, to give a bit more details, to give some numbers, the economic impact of the electronic music scene in the Netherlands, and we are a 17 million people country with 17 million inhabitants. It's like 800 million euros on a yearly basis, and the music the music industry in general is like 200 million, which 90% is electronic music, because maybe our native tongue is not the most beautiful to listen to. So that's like almost 1 billion in economic impact that is lost in a year, and that's my real issue with this pandemic. So our industry is not seen the same as other industries. We are still, we're nightlife, or the night in general, has been demonized for more than 2,000-3,000 years. Yeah. In literature, in poetry, in arts, and that's still something which is very much part of our thinking, and definitely part of the thinking in industry. Because, and you could see it also from there was like this public hearing I don't know how you say the thing is in Tweede Kamer, so in Parliament. Yeah. In Parliament, and there were only 2 parliamentarians MPs. There were only 2 MPs that showed up, and there were 3 mayors. They would give a story about how they're going to deal with it, and they cancelled. So you can see out of that the whole parliament, that is still nightlife is very demonized and not seen as a full industry, which it is, of course.
Yeah, just so people can understand, because as you can appreciate, when you look around, you look at Australia, as we spoke earlier this week, and we spoke to Lutz from Berlin. Everyone talks about 2 segments: provision and restrictions or lockdowns. Can you give us a bit of an understanding, not in so much detail, but just an understanding of what provision has been put forward financially to support, and what restrictions have you undergone in the Netherlands so that we can understand how that sits comparatively? Because I think that's quite important for people to understand.
Yeah, so provision is that businesses are supported up to 80% of the 80% of the cost for their staff.
Yeah.
For venues, there is no, yeah, apart from maybe one time it's like 4,000 euros or something, but we're already 8 months in the game for your overhead cost. So what basically is, so 80% of the cost of the staff was covered. The first months it was like you couldn't fire any of your staff.
Yeah.
If you wanted to get that money. All the festivals are closed. All the venues are shut down. So none of them have been opened up. So that's all the support there is basically. So there hasn't been any support for clubs to keep them alive, or for the events industry whatsoever. And when they went into the second phase of the provision, at first there was a fine if you would fire people. This in the second round you could still get money, but there was no fine if you would fire people. And what basically has happened is that all the nightclubs have basically fired all of their staff. It is just not only maybe the people that work on the office, and which are really important to stay around. So that is really the situation. There hasn't been any financial support to keep the industry in that sense, to keep it alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that
I mean,
so that yeah, that really shows that, like, and nightlife or popular music has not been in the support packages for culture. Like the government is really treating it as an entertainment industry that should be able to keep up their own trousers. So it's from that point of view. No, I don't think it has been a lot of support for businesses in the Netherlands.
Okay, and just talking about, I mean, what does it look like in terms of the future for clubs in the event sector? Then what's it? I mean, have there been many casualties in the Netherlands in terms of clubs and events not being able to last this period?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's already two. I think two of my own favorite places that had to shut down. The School, one of our most important nightclubs, and Taxiland just was announced a couple of days ago. They wanted to extend their lease because they couldn't open. And so that is already two like major venues which are very important for the nightlife scene and for our identity in Amsterdam, that have are shut down because of the pandemic. And as I said, many others have fired all of their staff. And what I'm hearing from many operators is like I've been open for 10 years. I had to fire now a month ago all of my staff, and by the time hopefully we reopen maybe in mid next year, we are back to zero again. All your investment, all your time, all the money, like everything, the goodwill there that you have built up in the company is gone, and you start at zero again. So yes, there has been already some casualties. Also, definitely but that's an issue that is of course everywhere. Of course, gentrification is happening still very fast. So nightlife was already under pressure, and I think one of the issues we're running into here in the Netherlands, or definitely in Amsterdam, is that we are almost on our borders of our municipality. So our venues can't, of course, the venues which are in the city center, they have long leases and they will not be shut down. But those experimental venues, those with a temporary lease, they will, for them it will be very difficult if you suddenly have a chunk of almost maybe 2 years that is taken out of your 5-year contract. then it's almost impossible that you finish that that you finish that lease in a good way. So yeah, that's it's quite serious in my opinion, and that's also why we're trying to raise attention for this topic, trying to come up with new ideas, or try to influence the city council and the mayor to come up. It's not always about money. It's also about what are smart policies, what are like the 24-hour licenses. Can we do another round of 24-hour licenses so that people also have something to look forward to, that venues have something to look forward to, that when they can open up again, that they have that license installed, that they have new possibilities, and that we have, that we created progressive laws and regulations that would bring the industry back on their feet and quick.
And it's, I mean, there are several questions I think we've answered there, and it's, look, just changing the subject a little bit. Has there been anything that's inspired you coming within this pandemic? And has there been any innovations that you think have been, smart or creative, or things that are just have sort of blown you away, given the resilience and the entrepreneurial spirit and creativity of our sector? So yeah, and any innovations or inspirations that you've seen out there that you could probably present, or an idea that you've seen that's just sort of blown you away a little bit, even in its simple terms?
Yeah. So what I very much what I very much like about what's happening within this pandemic, and what I see is that there's the sharing of knowledge has become now something which became way more important for everyone in the industry. So you see that people are organizing more multidisciplinary events. Apart from also organizing a live stream with music, they also do a workshop next to it, or a hackathon, or more roundtables have been organized. So that is something, because that's also, of course, what our work is a bit. That's what I very much like about it, is that that you see this cross pollination between things, but also having a more cross disciplinary approach, and not only focusing on just doing a music show, but also being a mentor for the next gen, who are that can take up the mantle and go into the scene afterwards. And that is something which I think it gives me a lot of hope. It also inspires other people, and sometimes I think also nightlife operators and promoters, they also need that you can sometimes just speak to your peers and say, well, oh yeah, we're all in this together, and we're trying to get through it all together. And that's why we keep on fighting, because nightlife people are, and that's a quote I'm still stealing from Ariel, she probably will also mention, but nightlife are natural organizers, and that's really what I feel myself as well.
Yeah.
I've also, like, in promoting parties, you always have to do it yourself. Nightlife people are always finding ways to come out of the eye of the storm.
Okay. Thanks, Mirik. So just talking about how could if I asked you, what do you think the government should have done differently, and given your personal situation, what could you have done to make a difference, or to look at something differently? So first, from a government perspective, what you would have liked to have seen from then, and the other thing is if there's anything that you felt that you could have possibly done, or your organisation could have done to sort of possibly help many of the businesses get through, and yourself.
Yeah. So I think what is happening now in the Netherlands, which I'm really happy about, that in January we're starting the first trial events where people will be rapid tested at the door, where rapid at the door. What kind of capacity can we run these events? So that is happening. But I think what government should have done is I think, like, this conversation that started when the pandemic hit in March, and then I think in September the first conversations on this level were taking place. And the Dutch are often very pragmatic,
Yeah.
and they can organize these kinds of things quite quick. But I think in the whole response, our government has been very slow at this time. I'm seeing now all the other countries around us are already are already giving people the vaccine. The Netherlands is now again, and everybody saw this coming. Hey guys, we have to be on time, and now we're going to be a month or a month and a half later than all the countries around us. So that's for me feels a bit weird if everybody knew it was coming. So what I think is that we had to started these conversations sooner. Also something what I think should have been done differently is to recognize electronic music or music as nightlife as something which is culture. They have recognized it as being creative industry or top sector creative industry, but they haven't applied that because other sectors got support.
Yeah.
And so it's still that recognition for the value that it brings to cities, and also the vehicle in recovery, because like as soon as events can start to happen again, and tourism will start again, then probably your music festivals and your nightlife will be the driver for recovery. And because there are so many jobs in all classes are connected to the nighttime economy and to the music industry. That's why I think that they had to do that on a sooner and on a bigger level. So that's the first. I think these conversations like see us for full basically.
Yeah.
And then secondly, where I think that we could have been better in is the cross-sector conversations. So, for example, within hospitality, the restaurants and the hotels were talking for themselves. The venues and music venues and nightclubs were speaking on their own behalf. Then you had the festivals. So that is something I think is like what I would have liked to see that we would have more power in is bringing those different sectors together and come and speaking with one voice, because then you could say, well, we're here, we have that's more than 100,000 people working in this industry, this is the economic impact, and you still see, because of course I also understand that everybody also wants to fight for their group, and that's also possible because everybody is screaming and everybody is in line trying to get their voice. So there we could have improved. That is something I also look critical in what we have could done better, and hopefully will do better.
Thanks, Mirik. So just two more questions, really. As I say, it wouldn't be too painful for you to do this. What do you see the future of the industry or nighttime economy? How do you think they're going to future-proof the Netherlands in terms of moving forward, whether that be operationally, tech? What do you see the developments over the next sort of 3 years, really, to make sure that if this comes about again, we can.
So it's what I think is I think everyone wants to get back to normal. I don't really I don't really believe that we are gonna do things radically different, because it's also in our DNA. We want to get together. We want to be in a large crowd. We want to be in a sweaty nightclub. We really, that is also who we are. And I'm also not so I'm also not so afraid to also take pride in that that's also who we are.
Yeah.
I think we also need it. Like that became clear for myself about this whole pandemic. That that hasty encounters. That like that quick chat. Like that is very very necessary, and necessary for just for well-being, and also like just running into somebody on the market, running into an old pal, going for a drink, and then ending up having having a brilliant night. That is also really something which is in our DNA, and I hope that will come back soon. but for sure, I think that businesses will keep continue in organizing also online events. There will be less, like the tourism industry, it will take for 3 or 4 years to bounce back.
Yeah.
A lot of Amsterdam's nightlife, but also the music industry and festivals are very much built on tourism. And I think that they will keep on continuing organizing also online events together with their regular program, which will be, of course, much more localized, locally focused. So that's also something which I think is positive, that we have like a radical reevaluation of okay, the quality that is already in the country, and not always having to bring it from outside. And I think that these new streams and business models will also be helpful, because it will take some years to get to that level where we were at the beginning of 2020. So that's what I think is most important.
I think it's interesting that there's been a consistent narrative here, apart from one or two, that the value and recognition of the sector has been it's massively been undervalued and undersupported. The livelihoods and the workforce has been supported, but the reality is when you look at some of those support mechanisms, they only really survive if the business survives. So, and there's a disproportionate support mechanism on the other side. So it's a consistent message. So just one last thing, just to wrap up, Mirik, and I appreciate your candor and your patience. What message would you give the UK nighttime economy today to give them a vision of the future, show them some resilience from you personally?
Yeah, so I think it's all about making sure that we keep that, the capacity, that we keep that knowledge as much as we can inside the industry, because it will be very necessary in very important in rebuilding rebuilding the scene and rebuilding the events industry. Because I've seen a lot of people also transferring to other jobs and to other professions. So I think it's really about, let's hang in there. We need every person as soon as we can. And I think coming year we need to get back to a situation where it's a calculated risk. If you go to an event and you maybe have like a rapid test, or you have a negative test before you go in, we need to get back to a system where you can say, well, okay, it's a calculated risk of maybe 5% that it might be infected if I go to this event. Because we have to get rid of this 100% security, no risk at all. Like every time when we do something, when you go out, there is a risk that you maybe damage your hearing, or there is a risk that something else might happen that you trick. And we have to get back to the system where people say, well, this is a calculated risk I'm willing to take. The government understand that is also calculated risks are necessary to get the industry back on their feet, and that we have different layers of safety. So one of them is vaccinating, the other one is the rapid testing, the other one is maybe still social distancing. And so that we, and in the last quarter of next year, have really the insight, okay, this is we're getting back to normal.
Perfect. Mirik, I hugely respect you and appreciate your time. You've been amazing as usual, and your work and everything you're doing has been amazing. So thank you very much for your contribution, and worldwide these days with the amount of input that you have. So just to wrap up, just want to thank from everyone in the UK for your work, and let's continue to talk, and hopefully at some point this year we'll be able to get you over to get involved in some more events and share some of that knowledge and information with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael, and also keep up the hard work on your side of the North Sea.
Thank you.